All right, fire it up. Let's do your thing here, bud. Nobody's any better at this than you are.
That's fine. Take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. Good luck to you.
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here.
Brett, be affirmative.
You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Hell yeah!
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4. Great job, guys.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark, and thank you for joining this evening's edition of Racing in the Draft, where we head to Talladega for the YellaWood 500. At least weather will not be an issue this weekend. All we have to watch out for is the big one. Looks to be dry, slightly warm, normal Talladega weather without any precipitation finally. Or super hot or super cold. Just going to be a normal race weekend. If we think Talladega is anything but normal. But either way, I will try to stay not distracted because I'm a Virginia Tech Hokie fan and they're playing football right now. And before I started this, they were doing great. And they just gave up 2 quick scores. So we'll try to not pay too much attention to that. And if you happen to hear yelling in the background, it's my family because they're watching the game and not listening to me. But either way, hope everybody's having a great weekend. And if you happen to watch the truck race earlier, you know that carnage is probably going to happen. But before we head into the Talladega and look at stats and histories and archives and all that fun stuff, let's take a look at last week at Texas Motor Speedway, where William Byron kind of came out of nowhere and kind of stole that one. For some words, I don't know if that's the right word, but either way, he was there at the end and got the W. So congratulations to William Byron and Liberty University. But the optimal lineups from last weekend at Texas, and it ended up being a kind of a Bubba Wallace show at the beginning. So for good on Bubba Wallace for having quite a good race. Led a record number of laps for Bubba Wallace, 111. He definitely needed this type of a race to kind of help get his mindset for the rest of the playoffs, and he kind of put himself in a really good spot. If he can have a clean Talladega, we know that he's not the best at road courses, but he could end up getting to the final 8, which would be a huge, big accomplishment for Bubba Wallace, and I think it would be great for him and for the sport. So if you're just joining in, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'd appreciate it. But William Byron started 18th and finished first. We had 5 place differentials. That's kind of what we're going to see today or tomorrow in the YellaWood 500 at Talladega. It's all about place differential. You potentially could have somebody dominate, but history says we typically don't. But William Byron from 18th to 1st, Kevin Harvick 22nd to 6th, Chase Briscoe 31st to 10th, Chase Elliott 29th to 11th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 24th to 9th. Yeah, kind of had a feeling it was going to be a little bit of a place differential having those guys start in the back, but hopefully you had a good weekend last weekend. With that, William Byron now sitting atop still with 2 races, even though Ricky Stenhouse Jr. almost closed the gap a little bit, but William Byron snuck in there for another optimal lineup. So William Byron with 11, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. now in second with 9 optimal lineups. Chris Buescher, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr. rounding out the tie for 3rd place. Do we get to see JJ Yaley kind of get another optimal lineup? Maybe a BJ McLeod to kind of round this thing out and fill this board up? Or do we have our normal guys come up and just fill in the holes here? So we'll wait and see. It's going to be interesting. Talladega always is. But let's head to Talladega, the largest of all of the tracks that we go to, at least oval-wise. They're larger road courses. But Talladega is a super speedway race. It is 2.66 miles in length, 33 degrees of banking, and all of the turns. The race length is 188 laps. Lost profit. Hey, bro, let's take down a tournament tomorrow. Yes, let's take down a tournament. Super speedways are some of my favorites. I'm playing light, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I play about the same every week. But if there are weeks to kind of play light, the super speedways are some of those that you could easily kind of let your foot off the throttle a little bit to make a racing term. In the gambling world, especially the betting world, I don't know how anybody would even think about trying to bet on one of these things. Literally, there's 38 drivers in this race, and any one of them. I mean, BJ McLeod could win this thing. Doubtful, but the opportunity is absolutely there, more so than at any other track, other than maybe Daytona and Atlanta. But Talladega is even more of a wild card, I think, than Daytona or Atlanta. But those are our comparison tracks also: Atlanta, Daytona, Talladega. Daytona and Talladega are truly the super speedways. Atlanta is a hybrid super speedway, I guess, because they do draft in large packs. So when the big one happens, or if someone wrecks, it ends up being kind of a big one. So that's kind of why Atlanta falls into this group. But either way, the real reason we're here is to break down the drivers. And surprise, surprise, look at there, Brad Keselowski atop of the pricing this week. Not surprising, though. This is probably Brad Keselowski's best track, and we have seen all year long that RFK Racing has been very, very fast at the super speedways. I mean, Brad finished second in Daytona just a couple weeks ago, so if that tells you anything. But for Draftkings, Brad also qualified a little too far up for me. So let's break down this box like I do every week. I know for some people who are been here and seen this, they know what all this stuff means. But so Brad Keselowski is the driver's name. His price on DraftKings is $10,500. The next line down is his starting spot. They only did qualifying today. They did not do any practice. If there had been practice, I would have put it here next to it where it says no practice. But Brad Keselowski went out and qualified 5th, which is good. It's a great qualifying spot. For DraftKings, that is not good for this weekend, at least for what we're looking for. Then, if we go down to the next line, at the bottom, starting from the left, is a combination of the 5 last races at Talladega. So, earlier this spring, they raced at Talladega, and then they raced this time last year, and of course, spring of 2022, and the fall of 21, and the spring of 21. So the last 5 races do all encompass the next generation car. So it's good to kind of have a track that we have none of the old generation cars. So all the data that we're getting is all from the next gen. But Brad Keselowski does have no, hold on. I take that back. 22 was the first year. So we do have a full year of the last gen. Sorry. Fell and hit my head there for a second. So we do still have 1 year of the last gen where Brad Keselowski did get a win. I think that was in the spring of 21, if I remember correctly. But either way, this is still Brad's one of his better tracks. So these 5 races is this next line. So he's got 1 win, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 3 top 20s, a 38.5 DraftKings average, and a 11th place average finish. He finished 5th in this race at the last time they were here, which was the spring race here at Talladega. total races here at Talladega. What narrative-based winners are we? Sorry, Lost Prophet asks, what narrative-based winner are we going to see tomorrow? Gibbs first win, Harvick retirement win, Elliott first win of the season, Brad first win as an owner. Ooh, if those are my choices, I will say Brad's first win as an owner would be the top of the list of most probable. Then maybe, or other, yeah. But I think in the list of the order that you just asked, I think Brad being the first winner as an owner would be the top of my list. I don't think. I mean, Gibbs is. I mean, it's always possible that Gibbs gets a win here. I mean, like I said, anybody has the chance to win here, and Gibbs is driving a Toyota and does pretty good at super speedways. He has a tendency to have rookie mistakes, as we saw last weekend at Texas when he decided to run down the middle of pit road and almost killed Denny Hamlin. Not killed, but almost killed Denny Hamlin's car and his playoff chances. So that's the problem I have with Gibbs right now. I think Gibbs' probably best shot might be the Roval. He's a really good road course racer. Other narratives. I mean, I think two of the kind of cool featured things that might happen would be either Kyle Larson or Martin Truex Jr. getting their first super speedway win, because neither of them have ever won a super speedway, and both of them have historically bad finishes. So that would be kind of an interesting finish for if either one of the two of them ended up having a good race. Yeah, I think probably the best narrative would be Brad getting his first win as an owner. Or maybe, I mean, it would be really cool to see Harvick win, but I just don't think we're going to have to see a lot of attrition and just being at the right place at the right time for Harvick to get the win. But I mean, there's much of a chance of that as Elliott getting his first win or Brad getting his first win. So, but back to Brad Keselowski. Over here to the right-hand side, we have Brad Keselowski. He has raced at Talladega 29 total times in his Cup career. He has 6 wins out of those 29 races, 10 top 5s, 14 top 10s, and 18 top 20s. So pretty consistent for Super Speedway for Brad. He's got a 13.6 average finish, which is actually, I mean, once again, these are really good numbers because of the high amount of carnage that happens at Talladega. And then over here to the top left, this is kind of where, after qualifying, because they didn't have practice, but after qualifying, the last 5 races here, the last 10 races at super speedways, including Atlanta, and if they had practice, I would put it in here, but they're qualifying. I've got Brad Keselowski as a 13 on the ranking system, so that's out of all the drivers, I've got him ranked 13th. I only have Brad 0 to 5%. I think I have him in like 1 or 2 lineups. I don't have him a whole lot, even though I think he has a very good shot at winning. If he starts 5th, doesn't lead a whole lot of laps, doesn't have a whole lot of fast laps, and ends up winning, he'll be in the top 10 in points, but I'm not sure he gets to the top 6, which is kind of what the optimal is. Now, I do try to target who I think are going to be the top 15 in Draftkings points. And points are based on place differential, so you get a point per place differential. You get 0.45 for fast, whoever was fastest that lap. And there's 188 of those laps. So when we're looking at it, we didn't talk about Dominator. This is where I needed to talk about this. 188 laps, Dominator points of 131.6. Laps led of 47, so you get 0.25 points for each lap that you lead. And laps led, we could have 20 guys that have laps led. So the laps led get spread out. Same thing with fast laps. Yeah, my boys just scored another touchdown. Good job, Hokies. Sorry. Fast laps are spread out the entire field because it's a drafting track. The guy running in 20 6th could easily have a mile or 2 or 3 faster than the leader, because the leader is pulling everybody per se, and everybody else has less resistance because of the air hole that's being punched from the guys in front, which makes their car have the ability to go faster. So fast laps are typically third on back, and that just kind of gets spread out amongst everybody that's back there. So fast laps get spread out, which really diminishes the dominator potential. And there's not enough points for laps led, really, because we have so many different leaders, to get enough points for dominator. So we are really, really looking for place differential and finishing position. Hence why I've got Brad at a 13. I think starting up front, he has the potential to lead a lot of laps, but not have a lot of fast laps. And we get more points from fast laps than we do laps led. And I think because they run side by side, you'll have Brad lead a lap, and then maybe Joey Logano leads a lap. Then Brad leads a lap, and then maybe Kyle Larson leads a lap. And it just goes back and forth. So there's not a whole lot of potential for dominator points, even though you could have somebody that looks like it was a dominator and not score that well, especially if on the last lap they end up sliding back and finishing 29th. Then that's all for naught. So I really do not target any dominators in this race at all. Next in line here, Ryan Blaney, who I honestly think may have the best shot to win. He has the best average finish. But Ryan Blaney is 10,200. He is starting 10th. Not awful for Draftkings. Not great either. He could easily be in the top 15 in points. But it's going to be really tough to get inside the top 6. Now, if he goes out and ends up finishing first, I mean, that's 9 place differential points plus the 45 points that he would get for winning the race. So right there by itself would be easily enough to be in the top 15, if not in the top 6. And we'll look at that when we get to the end of this and we look at optimal lineups from previous races. But I think Ryan Blaney has one of the best chances of winning. Penske always brings really fast super speedway cars to the track. He finished second in this race before. He's won twice out of 17 total races. He's got a 46.3 DraftKings average, which is phenomenal. He's got 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and 5 top 20s in the last 5 races at Talladega. There's a lot of things that point for Ryan Blaney to end up having a really good day. I only have him in 10 to 15% because of the place differential. There's not a huge, but if I were to go out and if I had $10, $15 to put down at Vegas and somebody said you have to spend this money on a bet for who wins the race at Vegas, I'm gonna put it all on Ryan Blaney. I think he has the best shot at winning. All right, next in line here, Joey Logano at 10,100, starting outside pole. I mean, once again, it's a Penske, it's a Ford. They qualified well. They race super speedways really well. And Joey has nothing to lose. He's out of the playoffs, so all he's looking for is a trophy. He's trophy hunting. Or potentially pushing Ryan Blaney to a win to advance Ryan Blaney in the next round, because that's really the only other Ford other than Brad Kay or Chris Buescher. But he's going to push another Penske like Ryan Blaney to a win before he takes the win himself, if that is what ends up happening. I don't see Joey Logano trying to pass Ryan Blaney with a few laps to go. I mean, he might, but I don't think he wrecks him. I could be completely wrong about that. Joey's wrecked other people before. He's wrecked his teammates before. He wrecked Brad at Daytona when Michael McDowell won. So, who knows? I just don't... Starting outside pole, I don't like anybody starting from the front row or even the front 2 rows at super speedways, much less the top 10. So, that's my thought on Joey Logano. I don't have much ownership in Joey. But he does have 1 top 5, 1 top 10, 1 top 20 in the last 5 races here. He's got a 26.2 average finish, which is not very good. And he's only got a 0.5 DraftKings average. He finished 30th here in the spring race. Now, prior to the next gen car coming, he does have 3 wins here, 9 top 5s, 11 top 10s, 15 top 20s, and an 18.5 average finish. I mean, he and Joey and Brad were like shake and bake. And we've got a shake and bake reference coming up soon. But they really were like shake and bake at Talladega. If it wasn't one of them, it was the other one. I just don't like Joey's starting spot, so I don't have much ownership there. Chris Buescher, $10,000, the teammate to Brad Keselowski at RFK, and who won at Daytona earlier. Chris Buescher is really good at super speedways, and the Fords, once again, are really good. The first 4 cars so far have all been Fords. So that's where DraftKings thinks the horsepower is, and kind of a lot of speed charts have them that way too. $10,000 for Chris Buescher. Hey, we finally got some place differential here. Chris Buescher, 24th. I don't think I fixed the ranking systems. I did not fix the ranking system because Joey Logano should be 29th, not 3rd. Chris Buescher's 3rd. All right, so don't pay attention to the ranking systems. I screwed that up. Oh well, I'm not going back to fix it because that would take too long in the middle of this. But you can really kind of tell who I like and who I don't like by percentages of the percentage of usage that I have. Now, my percentage usage is for 40 different lineups. I've run most of the max 20 lineup in DraftKings, and I run pretty much all of them. And I put together 40 different lineups. So this is a percentage based on 40 lineups, 30 to 35%. You can do the math and kind of figure out where I land with my ownership with Chris Buescher. But he is starting 24th, decent amount of place differential. He finished 3rd here in the spring race. He just won Daytona not too long, or a couple weeks ago. So I do like Chris Buescher, especially being in and around Brad Keselowski. So lots of place differential. I think it's a good possibility. Chris Buescher is also going to be pretty heavily on because he won Daytona. Next in line here, Denny Hamlin, another really good super speedway racer, mostly at Daytona, but does have some success here at Talladega. He's got 2 wins out of his 35 total starts. $9,800, starting 12th. Okay, not a ton of place differential here. Denny needs to have just a solid race. If he has the opportunity to go get a win, I think he's going to do that. But Denny also has a tendency to be like, okay, this is getting a little too crazy for me. I'm going to back out and see if everybody else wrecks. And he's going to take that chance. And that's kind of where Denny is right now, especially with the playoffs and the points. He wants to survive this race. If he's got the opportunity to get up there and lead or be in the top 4, he will. But if he thinks this is going sideways a little bit, he's going to back out. He's going to be one of the first ones to back out and be like, you know what, I'm going to just survive this race. If that means I happen to finish 20th, I finish 20th. So there's a little risk here with Denny Hamlin starting 12th. There's not a ton of place differential, but there is some. But Denny's also a racer at heart, so he's going to get up there and try to race. But I also think that Denny is going to try to make sure that he is around for the round of 8, so to make sure he can solidify himself into the round of 4. And I honestly think that this is Denny's year to win the championship. There's going to be 7 other guys here real soon that are going to have a different thought process on that. But I don't mind Denny Hamlin. Don't love the Denny Hamlin play. Wish there was a little bit more place differential, but he does have a tendency to be pretty good. All right, next in line here, we have got William Byron, $9,500. Last week's winner, and his 6th win this year or something. It's absolutely crazy what a just absolutely killer year William Byron is having. I don't think William Byron ends up finishing this race. I think he's going to be one of the ones that gets collected. How, when, what, where, and how? I don't know. I think he used all of his luck up. But he might not have. But starting 8th, there's not a lot of place differential here for me. So I'm probably going to fade off of him, even though he did finish 7th last year. But if we look, he's got a 14.4 average finish, 28.6 Draftkings average. Only one top 5 in the last 5 races here at Talladega. I'm just going to skip on William Byron this weekend. If it costs me, it costs me. But I just don't think there's enough place differential there to really have much for it. So, Chase Elliott, 9,300, who is in the owners' playoffs. Not the drivers' playoffs, but the owners' playoffs, and that's what actually pays the bills. So, Chase Elliott still has a lot to race for. Starting 23rd, Chase Elliott's very decent at super speedways. He's looking for that win this year still. Finished 12th in the spring race. Got a 12.4 average finish with a win in the last 5. 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 4 top 20s. He's got a total of 2 wins here out of his 15 total starts with a 14.3 average finish. I mean, fairly consistent. And because of the place differential and because he is really trying to make sure that the 9 team gets at least to the round of 8, if not potentially to the round of 4, I've got a decent amount of ownership. In fact, he's probably one of my highest owned this weekend. So lots of ownership in Chase Elliott. He's probably going to be pretty heavily owned because of his starting spot. I've got him in 35 to 40% ownership. Bubba Wallace next in line here, 9,200. Bubba Wallace is historically a pretty good super speedway racer. 2023 has not been kind to Bubba Wallace on super speedways, though. He finished 28th here in the spring race. He did not have a good Daytona on either Daytonas. And I don't think his Atlanta finishes were all that good. So, as of recent, Bubba Wallace has not been a great super speedway racer. Even though he does tend to lead laps. But just has a hard time finishing out, at least this year. So, does that trend continue? Not real sure. The problem is, Bubba Wallace, there's not a whole lot of place differential. And I'm telling you, place differential is absolutely the key to success this weekend. And I'm not saying just go out and start BJ McLeod starting in 37th. That's not a smart idea either. Even though BJ has had DraftKings success once or twice at super speedways. I think JJ Yelly's actually a better choice when it comes to super speedway potential finishes if we're looking at the back of the pack, guys. But let's finish up with Bubba Wallace here. He's got 1 win, which was in the fall of 2021. It was his first Cup career win. He's got a 16.2 average finish. Like I said, he just has sometimes a tendency to finish these things off high enough. He needs to have a good finish. He needs to have some good stage points to make it to the next round, and he's got himself in a pretty good spot. So I don't hate the Bubba Wallace play. I don't love it, and that's only to do with his starting spot. Same thing with Kyle Larson. I mean, Kyle Larson's my driver. I've been a Larson fan forever and ever. If you've watched my show before, you know I'm a Kyle Larson fan. But he's starting 4th. And if we look down here, he's got a negative 1.2 DraftKings average. Negative. He's got a 26.4 average finish. And Kyle Larson's not a bad super speedway racer either, but oh my God, he just is in the wrong spot every time. He finished 33rd in the spring race here. I mean, out of 17 total races at Talladega, he's only got 1 top 5 and 3 top 10s. 22.6 average finish. Kyle Larson just cannot seem to run well at super speedways. So he could end up burning me, which would be fine, because he needs to have a good week after last week. But if history's telling us anything, I mean, one of these times Kyle Larson's going to burn me in a super speedway because I just don't take any ownership in him because he just is that bad. So I don't have much ownership. He'll get some, but I don't. I mean, at this point, he's burned too many people at super speedways. He may be one of the lower owned guys this weekend. So Ross Chastain here, on the other hand, 8,800, does have a win here. He got the win last spring at Talladega. and he's starting 32nd. Oh, lots of place differential here. And his teammates kind of starting there in the back. And I'm telling you, you could literally almost be down a cylinder in these cars. As long as you can hold on to the draft, you're going to stay. Now, you're not going to go get the win, but, I mean, I don't know if anybody watched the race earlier today. It was a Christian Eckes that literally had the half of his front of his truck was missing on the left side and was running in the top 5 at Talladega in the trucks with a wrecked car, a wrecked truck, until finally he ended up getting into a bigger wreck. But if they had not gotten into that, he probably would have had a top 5 finish with a halfway beat up truck. So I don't know why Ross missed. I don't know if the setup was a little bit off. I did not get a chance to fully watch qualifying. I did go and look to see why Carson Hocevar did not have a good qualifying effort, but I missed why Ross Chastain did not have a good qualifying. So he's gonna be fine. I'm not worried about anybody in the field being potentially down on power, because as long as you can stay in the draft, these guys run around the track at half throttle anyways. So as long as you can stay in the draft, you're going to be fine. Ross will make his way up. I expect him to be just as heavily owned as Chase Elliott, if not potentially more heavily owned. Starting 32nd, tons of place differential. He's got a 15.2 average finish. Like I said, he's got the win here last year in the spring. 34.8 Draftkings average. 15.2 out of a total of 9 starts. I don't have any worries about Ross Chastain. Starting 32nd, I've got a ton of ownership, and I expect him to probably be pretty heavily owned. Kyle Busch, 8,700, our winner from earlier this spring here at Talladega. Kyle Busch it's hit or miss with him at super speedways. It's either he's going to finish in the top 5 or he's going to finish in the bottom 5. Kind of where Kyle Busch kind of lands. Now, Kyle's going to need to have a really, really good race, if not win, to make the next round of the playoffs. I think he ends up probably having a decent race and starting 25th. I'm willing to roll the dice, 35 to 40%. As you can see, I've got probably a pretty decent chunk of ownership on him, and I probably expect him to probably also be probably pretty heavily owned. Yeah, I mean, there's 3 guys right there that I expect to be pretty heavily owned. So ownership's going to get spread out, and you don't need to worry about salary cap this week. And when we get to the optimal lineups, you'll see there. I mean, super speedways are notorious for having optimal lineups with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 left on the table. So do not stress if all of a sudden you're building lineups and you've got a ton of money left over. Don't go and fix it. Go with your gut. Go with what you like. So I like the Kyle Busch play, but he's going to be pretty heavily owned, and he's going to need to probably win, if not have a really, really good finishing day. If he can get some stage points in stage 1 and stage 2, it'll be a little less painful for him. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Well, we know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is pretty good at super speedways. He ran really good at Daytona, the first Daytona and the second Daytona. And he finished 16th in this race last year. Like I said, there's tons of options of guys coming from the back with lots of place differential. And, I mean, Kyle Busch is there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. there. Chase Elliott's there. So lots of good quality cars to take that are going to be coming from the back. Ownership's going to probably push ownership down, so we don't have any true 1 or 2 true drivers to really kind of go after. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is definitely one that I have targeted, along with the Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain and Chase Elliott. So, I mean, we've got 3 drivers that are in the playoffs or ownership playoffs starting from the back. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was in the playoffs, and he's starting 35th. So 35% ownership there. Christopher Bell, who is in the playoffs, starting 15th. Not a ton of place differential. This is kind of like a Denny Hamlin play, even though Christopher Bell's not as good at super speedways as Denny Hamlin. And they're kind of starting in the same spot. So, I mean, I've got Christopher Bell in 10 to 15%. mostly, you can also, the other thing that you want to do when you're making your lineups is you want to align a little bit with teammates and manufacturer. The Chevys are all going to work well together. The Fords are going to work well together. And the Toyotas are going to work well together. At least until they get to the end of this thing. And the last lap or two, it's all bets are off, and the manufacturing thing kind of gets thrown out the window. The only ones that I see potentially where somebody's going to push somebody else to lead or to a win would be kind of like what I said, Chris Buescher pushing Brad Keselowski to a win. That type of scenario. But that's still teammates and manufacturing alliance that come into play. So Christopher Bell could end up having a decent day because if he gets together with a bunch of Toyotas, they miss some of the carnage. He could have a decent day. Just starting 15th, there's not a whole lot of place differential. I mean, starting 15th, if he finishes 8th, that doesn't quite do it. He's not finishing far enough up. Talladega, kind of the same thing. Starting 13th, 8,200. I mean, Christopher Bell at least has a better average finish than Talladega at super speedways. Here at Talladega, he's got a 25.2 average finish. Finished 13th here in the spring. Okay, better. But no top 5s ever here in his career. And in the last 5 races, only 1 top 10. It's starting 13th. That's not going to cut it. So I'm faded off of Talladega, as you could see, 0 to 5% ownership. Thanks for joining in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And as we continue on here, Daniel Suarez, 8,100, starting 28th. Daniel Suarez actually ended up leading a few laps and did really well in the spring. He finished 9th. I mean, if he can do that again, that's going to put him real close to being in the optimal lineup. It's almost 20 spots of place differential and about 30 points. That's about 50 points. That definitely puts him in the top 10 of points on average in Draftkings. So I like some Daniel Suarez, and he could get overlooked. And I think he and Ross Chastain may end up kind of hooking up, and maybe even with some of the other Chevys, and either kind of drafting with each other towards the back, or even maybe off of the main group. All right, my Hokies are doing well. I like it. But I think Daniel and Ross find each other and kind of just chill out, and just kind of wait for some of the carnage up front to happen. Ross does need to kind of get up front at some point. Daniel's not in the playoffs, so I like the place differential here, play with Daniel, and I think he may get overlooked. So, because you've got a Ricky Stenhouse and a Kyle Busch and some of the other guys that we talked about earlier. All right, next in line here, Martin Truex Jr., 7,900, is not very good at super speedways either. Not quite as abysmal as Kyle Larson, but still not very good. He's got 36 total starts at Talladega. Only 3 top 5s, 9 top 10s. 20.4 average finish for 36 races. And Martin Truex Jr. kind of has found himself in a little bit of a tight spot in the playoff points. So Martin's this could spell trouble. Now he's also really good at road courses, so next week he could easily get the win. So, but he's going to have some pretty stiff competition, especially if Kyle Larson ends up having a bad weekend again this weekend. They're both kind of sitting not in great spots in the playoffs. I mean, both of them are close to being in, or if not in, but they need to have good solid finishes. Martin and Kyle Larson are just not great super speedway racers. Whereas Eric Jones, 7,800, who is having a phenomenal 3 or 4 race stretch. Can he continue with this momentum? Ride the horse till he stops. Kind of my thought process. He's starting 26th. He finished 6th in the spring. He's got the highest DraftKings average of anybody else in the field at a 46.6. He does not have any top 5s in the last 5 races, but he has 4 top 10s. Okay, it's pretty solid. 10.8 average finish. It's one of the best average finishes we've seen so far. There was only other one better than him. Doesn't have a win here yet, but I mean, 16.2 average finish out of 13. If he can just repeat what he did in the spring, that's going to put him in the top 10 also. As you can see, 35 to 40% ownership. I like some Eric Jones. Alex Bowman. I just don't know what to do with Alex Bowman. He's okay at super speedway races. I mean, actually, he's not very good at Talladega. 24.8 at 8 average finish. That's worse than Martin Truex Jr. That's actually almost, I think, might be as bad as Kyle Larson. But at least he's got a positive DraftKings average. 15 total starts with only 7 top 20s. 23.7 average finish. So not great stats for Alex Bowman. So I've got a little bit of ownership, but not a whole lot. So Eric Almirola, 7,500, who does pretty well at super speedways. In fact, he does so well, he decides to go out and get the pole. Well, as if you watched all his video, you know where I stand about the pole sitter, or the outside pole sitter, or the 3rd place, or the 4th place starters. I don't like them. They historically don't even make it into the top 15 in points in DraftKings. So no interest here in Eric Almirola. This is 0 to 5. I can guarantee you it's at 0. And if it burns me, it burns me. The stats show that 90 to 95% of the time they don't even make the top 15 in points. So that is the key to super speedway DraftKings. You almost don't even take anybody in the top 10. It's almost too risky. Even though historically 1 or 2 guys ends up in the top 10 making the top 15 in points, but not many make it into the top 20. All right, next in line here, Kevin Harvick gets his last super speedway race, and I'm sure he will be happy to never super speedway race again. It is really dangerous. As we saw Chase Briscoe flip over 11 times at Daytona earlier this year, a couple weeks ago. So yeah, this is a dangerous track. $7,400 starting 11th for Kevin. So pretty good starting spot for him, but too high for my liking. He's got a 14.4 average finish over the last 5 races, 34.6 DraftKings average, finished 21st in the spring. Now, we look at his 45 total race starts at Talladega with a 15.1 average finish. That's not bad, but I don't need him to finish average. I need him to finish better than average. I think I have a little bit of ownership, but not much in Kevin. That and SHR, Stewart Haas Racing, has struggled. So, prove me wrong, but I'm not going there, really. Michael McDowell does have a Daytona win from the spring of 2021. And he does really well at super speedways. He's kind of like Bubba Wallace. Most of the time, he can find his way up front, can run up front, do all the things. But recently, he has just run into trouble. So, as we can see, he finished 35th in the spring, but he does have a 13.2 average finish over the last 5 races. 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s, pretty good. 43.0 DraftKings average, that's really good. I do have some ownership of Michael McDowell. I think he has the potential to get a top 10 or possibly even a top 5. And if he can pull that off, it's going to be a decent points day, at least in DraftKings. Austin Dillon, $7,000. Now, Austin's a decent super speedway racer. He's got no wins here at Talladega, but does have 2 wins at Daytona. He finished 38th in the spring. And even with that 38th place finish, he still has a 14.4 average finish. So, as you can tell, his average finishes are pretty decent. But Austin Dillon's luck lately has been horrendous. So, kind of that trend. It's momentum or lack of momentum. I'm looking at lack of momentum for Austin Dillon. He could go out and win. Like I said, anybody could win this race. But starting 14th, it's a little risky on the DraftKings side for me to have much ownership in Austin Dillon. Ty Gibbs, 6,900. Now, our sample size for Ty Gibbs is not very big with only 2 starts, but he has a negative 18.9. Negative 18.9 with a 34th place average finish. Oh. Yeah, Ty needs to learn how to drive the next-gen car at super speedway races. I mean, Ty could get the win. Don't get me wrong, but until he starts to show that he can handle running super speedway races, and the next gen car, yeah, I'm gonna fade off of that. He finished 31st in the spring. I mean, I still have him in 25 to 30% of my lineups. Why do I have that much? That probably will come down. I may end up adjusting that down a little bit. That's too high for a 22nd starting spot with an 18.9 DraftKings average. So, just for transparency, that's going to come down. Where that ownership goes, probably not to Austin, because Austin Cindric is starting 7th with an 18.7 average finish. Now, he did win a super speedway race. He is racing with the Penske boys, so he has the potential to run up front. The problem is he's going to need to run up and stay up front, starting 7th. I don't have much interest in Austin Cindric, so my ownership from Ty Gibbs will not be going to Austin Cindric. Like I said, I think probably on average, I've got $2,000 left in most of my lineups. There are a few that I'm a little bit less, but there's mostly more. I had some lineups with $7,400, $7,500 left. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're close in pricing, just slide down to AJ Allmendinger. Now, I mean, AJ Allmendinger sample size is not great here, but he does have a super speedway win in the Xfinity Series. So does Ty Gibbs, but our sample size is only 1, just like it is only 2 for Ty Gibbs. But starting 31st compared to 22nd, that's 9 points. If things were equal and they were to finish both in 15th, AJ Allmendinger is going to get more points because of where he's starting. So the sample size is not big here. And AJ is not known as a super speedway racer. He's a road course ringer. So take that into account. And guess what we have now?
Right. Yeah, no. Hey, we just want to say to all you other drivers out there, if you smell a delicious, crispy smell after the race, it's not your tailpipe. It's a little bit of shake and then bake. Shake and bake. That's our nickname. Get used to it.
And with that being said, look what we have. We've got Shake and Bake. Chase Briscoe and Ryan Preece are running the Old Spice Wonder Bread cars. So cool. And Chase Briscoe decided he'd go out and make that Old Spice run up front, starting 3rd. And guess what? Not interested. Starting 3rd, he can shake all he wants. He can bake all he wants. Not interested. But I do think the sketch between the two of them, and I think Chase Briscoe's actually kind of got the whole goatee thing going on. It's kind of cool. So good on them for coming up with something clever and marketing wise. Ryan Preece starting 19th. I mean, they're both driving Fords. But they're doing SHR cars. They finished 37th and 34th in the spring. At least Chase Briscoe's got a 15.2 average finish, where Ryan Preece has a 26.7 average finish. I mean, Lost Profit, you were talking about cool narratives. Wouldn't it be cool if Shake and Bake ended up finishing 1st and 2nd? Upside down. Spinning across the line to finish. With a photo finish. With both of them on their lids. That would be kind of interesting. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, other than I think it's really cool that they're doing the Shake and Bake thing and it's at Talladega, I don't have much interest in either one of these guys, to be perfectly honest. As you see, 0 to 5% on Chase Briscoe, 5 to 10% with Ryan Preece. So yeah, not a whole lot of interest there. Corey LaJoie, though, starting 36th, $6,200. His average finish is pretty bad. 23.4. Finished 24th in the spring. Only one top 20. But he's literally starting 2 spots from last. There's only really one place to go but up. So I'm going to roll the dice on Corey LaJoie. I'm going to roll the dice a lot with Corey LaJoie. 35% worth. At 6,200, I mean, it just opens up the playbook for pretty much everything else. Like I said, we're not worried about salaries this time around. I literally put people in that I wanted to and didn't even look at my salaries until I was done on my spreadsheets and was like, yep, just what I thought. No issues whatsoever. I mean, Corey LaJoie, with Gainbridge money, with the amount of money that Spire has spent in the last 2 weeks, yeah, this program is headed in the right direction, and I'll more than willing to take the chance that they could be close to a top 15, top 10, or potentially even optimal lineup. So, Justin Haley at $6,000, starting 30th, got a 19th place average finish. That's out of 5 races too. So Justin Haley's got a Cup Series win at Daytona, 3 Super Speedway wins in Xfinity Series. Justin Haley knows how to Super Speedway race. He knows how to draft, knows how to get it done. Yeah, so 7 total races at Talladega with a 15.1 average finish. All right, I'll take it. I like Justin Haley starting 30th. Plenty of place differential here. Like I said, we've got a ton of guys that know how to finish well at super speedways. Question is, who gets collected and who doesn't? Carson Hocevar said his car backfired, so he just stopped his qualifying lap, pulled it in, and said, well, I guess I get to start from the back. I've never raced super speedway races in the Cup Series, so I'm just going to watch it all happen out my window, which is probably the safest thing for Carson Hocevar to do. Let the attrition happen. Learn how the draft works with this Cup car, because it's different than what the truck does. And Carson had a decent day-to-day in the truck race. So keep your nose clean again, and he'll probably still continue to have top 20 finishes. And if he's got a top 20 finish starting 38th, that's huge. So yeah, I also probably expect Carson Hocevar to be probably heavily owned. As long as there's not something wrong with the engine, then that's why it backfired. That part was a little strange, but I also don't know. Maybe he missed a shift. Maybe, I don't know. It's really hard to say. But I'm willing to take the chance starting 38th. There is absolutely nowhere to go but up. So, yeah, I've got some ownership in Carson Hocevar this week. Todd Gilliland, 5,800, starting 17th. At least he's going to be pretty close to his teammate Michael McDowell. And you know, they're driving the Ford, so Fords are pretty quick at super speedways. I don't love the starting spot with Todd Gilliland. When I've got 5 to 10%, that's probably right at 5% ownership. I really don't like his starting spot, and even if he does finish 10th again, which he did in the spring, it's not. There's not enough place differential starting 17th. So Harrison Burton, starting 21st. This kid's so inconsistent. I am rolling the dice a little bit that he ends up having a decent day, but he's also driving the Ford, and it's pretty much a Penske Ford. So if he can get tagged up with the other Penske drivers, maybe ends up having a good day, but just stay away from Brad Keselowski because he's wrecked a couple times at super speedways. Riley Hurst, 5,500, put down a blistering lap early in qualifying. So good that he's going to start 6th. Yeah, you're starting way too far up, Riley. Pass. He finished 25th in the race in the spring. Good on him. I mean, that's a good finishing spot. But if you're starting 6th, that's not a good finishing spot. But that's a good finishing spot for somebody who doesn't run in the Cup Series regularly. I have no interest in Riley Hurst for DraftKings, though. Chandler Smith, next in line here at $5,300, starting 34th. Okay. And he's also starting kind of towards the back with Justin Haley and AJ Allmendinger. Well, I've talked about teammates. I've talked about manufacturers teaming up together. Chandler Smith as we can see, has never run a race at Talladega in the Cup Series. So, great opportunity to learn. Does he work with AJ and Justin Haley and kind of hang out in the back? Hey, maybe those are his teammates. But you could also go and hang in the back with Carson Hocevar, who's never run a super speedway race either. And literally, if you could have 4 or 5 guys, let's say go back 2 to 3 seconds off the lead lap, that's enough space for them to get slowed down and not be in the big one. I really honestly see a possibility where there is a group of 6 or 7 or 8 guys that are not playoffs, that are looking for experience. Chandler Smith, Riley Herbst. Now, Riley Herbst is starting too far up, but Chandler Smith, Carson Hocevar, even an AJ and those guys that are like, okay, we're just going to ride the back. We don't need stage points. We don't need to run up front until the very end. And if we're all running together, we can run down the big pack pretty quickly. They can stay on the lead lap. They miss the carnage. If I'm instructing the Chevys and these guys to do something, that's what I'm looking at finding those guys to do. So I've got some decent amount of ownership in Chandler Smith. I think he ends up finishing the race. I think he ends up finishing probably 18th to 20th, which is plenty to get him into the top 15 in points, if not further up, especially with the $5,300 price tag. JJ Yeley, he's starting too far up. He's starting 27th. I needed JJ Yeley to start 36th or 37th to be real interested in taking him. He did have an 11th place finish in the spring here last year, or this past spring. But yeah, I mean, if JJ Smart, he gets with Chandler Smith, Riley Herbst, and they just cruise around the back for a while. Not Riley Herbst. He's starting too far up. We're just going to pull all these guys up here. Ty Dillon. I like the Ty Dillon play. He finished 17th in the spring. He's got a 24.3 average finish, which isn't great, but he is starting 33rd. So if he can get to his overall average finish at Talladega, out of his 11 total starts, he's got a 13.8. I'm going to roll the dice on Ty Dillon. Also because he's with Spire. And, I mean, the guys that I just talked about that could just ride around the back. I mean, like I said, you need 4 on the low side, 7 or 8 on the high side, because you get any more than that and somebody messes up, then all of you are done. But you could trust 6 or 7 guys to not overly push each other and just cruise for the first 2 or 3 stages, or first 2 stages. And then, with 40 laps left, that's when you go, okay, let's go see what we got. So I've got a decent amount of ownership in Ty Dillon. Brandon Poole is starting too far up. BJ McLeod, I just don't trust. Even though he did have a 19th place finish here in the spring, he's got a 26.6 average finish over the last 5 races at Talladega and a 27.3 average finish over 6 races here. Yeah, I mean, I've got 1 or 2, I think, in my lineups of BJ, but not a whole lot of interest. Guys that I really like: Ross Chastain, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick. I really do like. I think Kevin Harvick, he runs fairly well here. I think it's a decent finishing spot here. Place differential: Brad Kay's in a good spot. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Corey LaJoie. Yeah. So, I mean, let's look at these optimal lineups. So, in the spring race from earlier this year, Kyle Busch from 17th to 1st. That's a place differential. J.J. Yeley from 38th to 11th. Place differential. Eric Jones, 24th to 6th. Okay, Ryan Blaney from 5th to 2nd. 3 spots. But he had 47 laps led, which was, I think, the high of the day. And as you can see, fast laps. 5, 5, 6, 5, 7, 5. He led 47 laps but only had 5 fast laps. Yeah, fast laps all come from middle of the pack. But look, we had $5,100 left over. We had 1 person that started in the top 10 that made the optimal lineup on this sheet. Same thing here. 1 guy started in the top 10. And we had $3,600 left over. So, yeah. Landon Castle from 33rd to 11th, 34th to 7th, 29th to 3rd. Yeah, I mean, and once again, I mean, look here. Brian Blaney led 31 laps, but only had 3 fast laps. Ross Chastain led 36 laps, only 4 fast laps. So, yeah. Fast laps don't mean much, so, and that's your biggest part of the Draftkings deal. Then if we look at Daytona from a couple of weeks ago, Corey LaJoie, 37th to 10th. Alex Bowman, 31st to 6th. Michael McDowell, 39th to 13th. 6th place differentials, no dominators. No real buddying with laps led that ended up making the optimal lineup. But $600 left over. I mean, that's using most of your salary cap, which is a little unusual. And then if we look at the second Atlanta race, all place differential. 6 place differentials, $4,500 left over. And once again, fast laps are spread out amongst everybody. 19 laps led, and you only had 6 fast laps. That's just the inverse of what we normally see. And then Daytona Spring Race, I mean, once again, 5 place differentials. 31st, 29th, 38th, 40th, 24th starting spots. One guy started in the top 10. 32 laps led for Chris Buescher, and only had 3 fast laps. Same thing again in Atlanta. $3,200 left here. $13,000 from Daytona 500. $13,000 left over for the optimal lineup. $3,200 left over for the Atlanta optimal lineup. 140 laps led. Only 9 of them were the fastest lap. Brad Keselowski led 47 laps. Had 0 fast laps. Yeah, we're not looking for the guy that's good. Now, you're going to get a quarter point for each lap led. So, yeah, that's why Joe Logano started first, finished first, had 140 laps led, did end up having the highest point total on the day. But that's all very unusual. I mean, as you could see, for the last, all these different pages, this is the first time we saw a front row starter. Yeah, look back here. Nobody. It's very unusual to happen. Not saying it doesn't happen. That's why I said 95% of the time, front row's not going to be there. All right, either way, that wraps us up. We've got an exciting day tomorrow at Talladega. Oh, it's always stressful. And trust me, there's a 99% chance the big one ends up happening. I've seen Talladega literally go green until 5 laps to go, and then the whole field gets collected and everything turns upside down. So when you're watching the race tomorrow and you're watching your DraftKings, you're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. I'm going to lose all this money. Just wait. It'll happen. Always does. If it doesn't, I'll eat crow next week and say, hey, my bad. But I'm just telling you. History doesn't lie. Stats don't lie. The big one happens here. Talladega and Daytona and Atlanta now. You can almost set a clock by him. So, either way, good luck. Hit that like and subscribe button. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns. Good luck. Enjoy the race. Have a great weekend. We will see you next Saturday to discuss what happened at Talladega and look at the Roval. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight. Getting the W, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Hell yeah! Proud of you there, Mac. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job. Great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal we got in here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away.
Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job.
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.